Today on Unpacked.
Just like I was demon-possessed, I picked up a phone, I phoned my dealer, and I never came back home for 3 years.
Did you at the time feel unsafe with the type of people that you were hanging around?
It's either as a woman, you get into prostitution, or you live thug life. That's why I believe in God the way that I do now, because I was so far gone.
Hooked onto drugs at the age of 11. Today's guest is here to share her story. Let's unpack. Born to a Zimbabwean mother and a Sepedi-speaking father, Happy Petrishko's family moved from one place to another throughout her childhood. An illness arose in the family that led to dire financial constraints, causing changes that would leave Happy vulnerable to sexual assaults and substance abuse. This is her story. Let's unpack. Happy, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So what was your upbringing and childhood like? What are some of the earliest memories you can recall?
You know, the older you get, when you look into your childhood, there's a lot of things that you pick up. I had a beautiful, happy childhood memory, but with a lot of pain and grief that's made me the woman that I am today. So I grew up, my father is from Petersburg, and he left for exile for 29 years, and he met my mother on the other side. So I was born in Zimbabwe, and I come from a background where my father was like discipline. He was military style, woman dressed accurately. You wore long dresses. You were not allowed to use foul language. You were not allowed to put makeup. You address elderly people as ma'am and sir. So I come from a very conservative background with a very praying mother. And so when we came back to South Africa, we moved into a place in Pretoria. I grew up in Pretoria. We grew up in, we stayed a little bit in Atteridgeville because they were not accommodating Black people then in the city. This was during the 80s. And somehow my father managed to move us in Pretoria Central. We moved into Sunnyside.
And how old were you at that time?
I was about 11, 12. And Sunnyside was just predominantly white people. And I had to adapt. I had to adapt to a brown skin adapting to things that white folk did. So obviously you're out of character already. You know, you do what you see. And in those days, because my father was in exile and he had us at such an old age, my oldest brother would have been in his 70s. So my father continued to have children while he was in his 60s. So when people saw my father, they would say it's your grandfather. But he was very well respected in the community. But the power that he had overseas, he didn't have that power anymore because he was old. So we went straight into poverty. And my mother had to try and make a plan as to how to raise these children because my father isn't that force everybody feared in exile. He's now tired and he's back home. So my mom had to become a home nurse, which means that she had to work 7 days a week just to get the bread on the table. We lived in an institution called the Salvation Army. That's where my father could get us into. So around us, we had your flats where people had good jobs and we went to a good school, but we stayed poor and we lived in a mental institution. So if you're a family and children and you're surrounded by people that are not okay mentally and of a different color, there's no ways that you see what you learn. So obviously I started finding the streets as a place of comfort. I, as young as I was, I had a lot of innocence because I do come from a family that has a lot of respect and morals and principles. But I had to be a different character in the streets. I had to leave that behind in order for me to have a kind of strength, because you need some kind of strength and swag and awareness when you're in the streets. I was molested when I was 11 by a neighbor. And that's when it all changed for me. Because I come from this background where your father is strict, it's very conservative. And because you're looking for attention and love, because none of it is at home. And for a long time, I was upset with my mother, and that's what we do. We tend to be very upset with our parents because of the way they raised us. But Black families, especially when you come from a poverty mindset, you have to do what you have to do. Had my mom not gone to work, we would not have a place to stay, not alone the bread on the table. But there's also a consequence to that hustle. We are children left alone. So that's when I met this gentleman. And people need to understand, when you expose your children and you leave your children behind to go and hustle out there, you just need to make sure that your kids are in a safe zone. Anyway, I got sexually molested. So it was very difficult for me to concentrate in school. Class for me, I understood nothing. And I failed constantly. And I began to gallivant the streets, basically.
So when you say gallivant the streets, paint a picture for what that would look like, because you're a child.
Yeah.
Is it that mom leaves early in the morning and you're left to your own devices?
7 days a week. Yeah, so she's basically working 7 days a week, night shift and day shift. So we left alone at home. Like I said, when you're older and you look into your childhood, something starts, being put together. And I remember as I was growing up, why I said it was happy with a lot of pain is because back then, when the rave system came in, because I started clubbing at the age of 11 and 12, there's something about Black nature and where you come from as a Black person. I'm talking about Pretoria, your Atteridgeville, your Mamelodi. They were not exposed to drugs back then. If they wanted to get some kind of high, it was either alcohol or not even weed was such a big exposure back then. So it all really started from the drug dealers selling to the white folk. It was a white drug, okay? So now I get exposed to the rave club, the rave scenes, and I find myself involved in a lot of that, and that's when I began to dabble with ecstasy and drugs and everything else. And then
in terms of what opened the doors, did you start with alcohol and cigarettes?
A lot of people always say that, you get peer pressured. I wasn't. I was always a curious person. I was also a very strong character. So I saw it. I got myself involved with it. So I remember starting off with cigarettes at the age of 11. I went to a friend's house and there was a packet of cigarettes of her mom's and I helped myself to it. I helped myself to the alcohol. And obviously my friends wanting, come to my house. My friends were older than me. So we did a lot of clubbing. And then I got my father to move us out of Salvation Army. And we moved into a place called Schubert Park Flats. If you Google Schubert Park Flats, it's like you had to be a strong character. It didn't have time for weaknesses. So this side in Sunnyside, you have your upper class that's doing ecstasy. And now we've moved to Schubert Park, where it's your lower class, Afrikaans predominantly. And a lot of people tend to look at gangsterism as in either colored or Black. But there's your poor class Afrikaners from the 70s and that got involved in gangsterism. And that's where the lingo, the prison lingo, where they pick up numbers, comes from. So myself and the brother that comes after me, who's now late from a drug addiction, we're 12, we're 13, and we're looking at these guys that they're in their 40s. They speak in the the prison language. And I mean, that's what we're getting exposed to. So I lived all these personalities and all these different lives. If I'm in Sunnyside, I'm living that upper class with the fur jackets, ecstasy, I'm untouchable. And if we're back at Schubert Park, I'm living this thug life, you know, with my brother. So it was really living all these characters and not knowing that there's trauma building and what the choices that I've made to live to be that hard person.
Was the trauma for you that was it building on top of you being sexually assaulted?
Yes, definitely from that. But as much as I put my father on a pedestal, as much as he was a great man, but he had a problem. He had a temper problem, you know. And my father used to beat me up as though he's fighting with a man, you know. So from the age of 7, his way of discipline, I mean, he just had a business deal, didn't go well for him, so he took it out on me because I poured salt on the floor. So really, I saw, and my sister, my older sister, most of my siblings, they went further in school. Myself and my brother, the only ones that kind of like went the other side because we're the youngest. But the oldest ones got exposed to that life overseas and everything. And I remember my sister telling me this, that when I was young and my father would physically attack her at the age of 3 or 4, I would come in between my father and my sister so that she doesn't hurt my father doesn't hurt my sister. So really I had that aggression in me. And then I got hit by my father with an electric plug that I landed up in hospital at the age of 7. My father was tall, dark, and handsome. You look at him, you want to respect him, address him as sir, you know, but he had that temper in him. And so he beat me up, and already I had to, if someone's going to be beat up like that at the age of 7, there's something in you that's going to make you aggressive. So I had that aggression with me all the time. So I think that's where the trauma then started, from the physical abuse and then the sexual abuse.
So now you've moved, you're exposed to a different type of life. Do you recall what was enticing about that life at the time for you?
Oh, no. But, you know, I'm going to bring the race thing again, because remember, it's predominantly white people. And then you're coming in not as a sheep. You're not saying, yeah, boss. You're coming in with authority. You don't just get the authority. It's either in you or it's not. So they can either break you or make you. So I came in that wherever I came to, I had to have like a force. So already that intrigued this people that were racist to then fall in love with another person of color, not sexually. They were just intrigued about, you know, our mind is who we thought Black people were, and here's a person with a different vibe. Not sucking up to them, just standing up as who I know I am, as how my father raised me. You know, I am from exile after all. But because of the pain and the trauma, then that's when I felt like each time I took this ecstasy and pills and cocaine, I was untouchable. So I started working. I dropped out of school because it was just, the lights were on, but nobody was home, you know. So I dropped out of school in standard 6, never went back, but immediately I started working in a restaurant.
What did your mother have to say about the fact that you dropped out of school?
You know, a lot of people always ask me, if you what did your mom have to say? I think my mom was too busy working. And I don't know what it is. There's children that have some kind of strength in them that they can even overpower their parents. I just had that in me where my parents couldn't control me. Sometimes I think if I was a naughty child by nature, but I was uncontrollable. I had the manners, I had the respect, but I was still rebellious. So I think they had given up on me from a long time. They'd given up on trying to reprimand me for a long time.
So you start to work at a restaurant.
Yeah.
And you're how old now?
13, going up.
And, I mean, we're not even going to talk about whether it was legal or not. That was just the time that you were living in.
Yeah.
And you now have your own income.
Yeah.
Did this make drugs more available to you?
I never paid for my drugs. That's the thing. Because of the discipline that I had at home, I had my own place. I was, in terms of discipline work-wise, I always had those ethics. So what would happen in a restaurant industry, when you're done, you know, your friends phone you, so let's go to this rave club, and drugs are there, and obviously you get exposed to the drugs, and then the party carries on. Then you go to, that was my lifestyle, go to work the night shift, day shift, and then your friend calls you, and then it's just party, work, constantly.
You mentioned, you know, ecstasy, cocaine. What was the next level of drugs that you know, upgraded, if I could call it that too?
Remember I told you I lived many lives. I mean, if I was in Pretoria West, I had to be that thug. You know what I mean? I had to be masculine. And if I was on the other side of the fence, I had to be like this. It depends what drugs you took and the kind of people that you were around. So I dabbled in everything, anything that you can think about, obviously, except for, I think, meth, because meth only came in the early 2000s. So, I mean, this side of the fence, I did your man drags with gangs. I remember one time, one of my friend's domestic workers called me and said, "Who is that person?" I think I was 13. "Who's that person you're hanging around with?" I'm like, "Oh, that is a friend." And he says, "That is one of the biggest gang members in Soshanguve that you hang around with." And I would go with this person, nothing sexual. That whole gang, I'd go to Soshanguve, there'll be guns on the table, and I'd imitate, I'd live that lifestyle because I just had that masculine side of me that I got exposed to a lot of things. So I did a lot of drugs.
Did you at the time feel unsafe with the type of people that you were hanging around?
I was too numb and too hard. I was too numb and too hard. And I think also people tend to see hard people like they didn't come from something. And that's why I got away with it, because after feeling like you're this powerful force, I started getting involved into heroin. I met my best friend. I grew up with my best friend, and he's my husband, who I'm married now. He was the only one that was like my comfort zone. He was the only one that didn't dabble with any of these things. So in that life, when I'm busy with this gang, when I'm busy with that high life of clubbing, he was like my best friend growing up as teenagers, where he would fetch me wherever and like just put me down and make sure that I'm okay mentally. But when I leave there, I have to be those hats. So no, there's no way where I ever felt like I was not safe. I was too numb and too hard.
At what point did you realize that you are addicted, you are hooked?
With the heroin. When I got exposed to heroin and crack cocaine. So for a long time, until I was 20, you know, you don't know when you're doing the coke and the ecstasy, you think you're untouchable. And then the older you get, you start remembering your childhood trauma. So this is now, I'm staying with my boyfriend, who's now my husband. He's bought me a good place, trying to look after me. You can try and look after the outside, but when the inside is broken, you know, nothing can be done. And I remember I was working, just like everything is fine. We stayed in Ferry Glen, and he went to work, I went to work, and just like I was demon-possessed, I picked up a phone, I phoned my dealer, and I said, "Can I meet you on my way to work? This time, give me a bag of heroin and give me a bag of crack." And I never came back home for 3 years. So everybody knew me as this popular happy that like was lovable in the club scene and everything. Nobody knew what happened to me in 3 years. And I think that is the worst of my downfall is when I became melancholy.
So what did happen to you in those 3 years?
My brother and I started using together. My late brother, we started using heroin. And back then, you know, they call it nyaupe now, you know. There's 3 ways that you can smoke it. It's either with a needle, or it's either chasing the dragon, or smoking it through weed. If you're going to smoke it through foil, or you're going to smoke it through through the needle. It's the worst. It's the worst that you can do. And as a girl...
Worst as in the feeling is the worst, or worst as in it's more addictive, it's more dangerous?
It can kill you if you overdo it.
So, you know, the different ways that you're taking the drugs, and you started using drugs with your brother, but now you've left your home with your boyfriend at the time. Where are you guys staying?
So this is what we're doing. We said, let's go to Durban. My brother said, let's go to Durban. Let's try and change our lives. You know, parents are praying for us. They don't know what's happened to us. But the more we try to change our lives, so we moved to Durban, and immediately I got a job in a surfing coffee shop. Getting a job was not a problem for me, thank God. And we stayed in a shelter. So what he would do, my brother would wait for me until I was done with work, and it was straight go to the dealer. I got so far gone and greedy that the drug was my life, that I even ran away from my brother. My brother showed me the things of the streets and what to do, because there's two things that you can do when you're in the streets. It's either, as a woman, you get into prostitution or you live thug life. My brother was one of the coolest people ever, beautiful soul, but the drugs had overcome him, and he taught me his ways of how to be in the streets, and I ran away from my brother, and I got greedy, and I started being with the wrong people.
Why did you run away from your brother? Is because you're saying
because I didn't want to share the drug.
There you go.
I didn't want to share the drug with him.
Yeah.
I don't want to share. You know, it's a sensitive subject that I'm not ready to talk about with my brother, but I'm just trying to show you how far these drugs had taken me, that I even got away from my brother, and I was. So in KZN, what happened is that I did not associate myself with women. I associated myself with men, because men, they had a way of making money. And it was just, that's how masculine I was, you know? I had to, because of those, I had to face a lot of consequences because of the choices that I made. I remember I had a gift of the gab. So what they liked, these dealers and pimps, if you have a business plan for them and it's got a lot of money, they're very quick to adhere to that business plan. So because of where I'm from, I might have that gift of the gab, but I never went on with whatever idea I had. Because
you didn't have follow through?
No, I didn't have follow through because I still had a heart, you know. And so I made a business plan with one of the gangs, and we went to a township next to Pavilion there, and he told his gang members that I'm going to be part of that gang, and this is the business proposition. And that gang member, they were very close, and suddenly a woman is now told that she's going to lead this gang. And they didn't take that well. And I remember I took my baton, and I was surrounded by all these gangs, and I'm new, and I had to be tough. Well, I could feel there's like a gun being pointed to me to say, it's not going to happen. Who's this person that you're bringing in our circle, you know? And already from the click of that gun, it didn't happen, you know? That's the consequences that I had to go through. There was another time where I met another individual. I was looking for a rock pipe, and we went down this bridge. You women don't go there. I went underneath because I was just married to this drug. And you know, because this is now going back when I can't, sorry, I'm just like all over the place. I'm just giving you, I'm giving you like things that happened, highlights that happened to me because of the choices that I made. And I remember we came back to Pretoria because Durban wasn't working. And I went down the bridge with this guy looking for a rock pipe, right? And I remember I'm coming back in the late 2000s. Already Black people are now moving into town. And now I don't recognize Sunnyside anymore. But the people that knew me back then, they knew that, you know. But so obviously there's different characters that's coming from different provinces. You don't know their hearts. But I didn't think like that, you know? So I went down the bridge, Nelson Mandela Bridge, with this guy. We smoked the crack, you know? And he took a knife out, and this guy stabbed me. We had like, I think probably 15 minutes, half an hour of us fighting, and he was obviously trying to rape me. And there's no ways it's my power. It was definitely God sending his angels down, and it just didn't happen, you know? It just didn't happen, you know?
How did you survive that attack?
It was very bad. I was bleeding. It was very close to death. And then went to a friend's house, threw me in the bath. I was just full of blood and covered with blood, you know. But when I left next day, I put my shades on and I was back in the street looking for my drugs.
Wow. So you didn't even go to the hospital?
No.
Wow.
No.
And what happened to your wounds and your recovery and healing?
Self-recovery. So that's another trauma again being built up. Yeah.
Because you obviously reach a point where you don't feel as much. You said use the word numb.
Yeah.
You don't feel pain the same anymore.
Yeah, there was no point of return. I was deep in it. There was no point of return. There was no dream. I didn't even have a dream about anything in my life. It was just that, okay, every day it's me and this drug. It's me and this drug. I was like empty people. I was very much to myself, operated on my own. And that was it.
When last, in that time, had you spoken to your parents?
2 years.
2 years.
3 years.
3 years. 3 years.
Yeah.
So you hadn't spoken to them in 3 years.
Yeah.
And from their perspective, where did they think you were? Or they just didn't know if you were alive or dead?
They got used to me and my sibling, me and my younger brother. You see, our youngest one is we would phone him, you know, my mom sheltered him a lot. He went to school, he studied. I mean, he used to bail me out of court, he used to bail me a lot. I've done time. And my youngest brother would always bail me out and things like that. So I think he would tell my parents, like, no, she's fine, you know. And even when I got arrested, I wouldn't like make it my family's problem. I'll just do the time, you know.
What were you arrested for?
Drugs. Drugs or just being at the wrong place at the wrong time.
So at the time, I mean, you've disappeared and you've been in this long-term relationship. What was your boyfriend thinking? Were you in touch with him or did you literally just disappear?
No, I was in touch with him. I wasn't in touch with him. You know, he tried. He tried his best. I think everybody tried with me. I come from a very family that's very supportive and loving. I think he just gave up. I was way gone. I was very numb. So I think they just gave up.
So at this point, you're how old where you've come back to Pretoria and you've been 3 years basically MIA? How
24.
Old? So you're 24 years old.
Yeah.
You've literally been on drugs, living the life on the streets for over 10 years.
No, 3 years. 3 years. Remember, before that, I had, it's like the drug ecstasy and all of that.
Yes.
I was able to have my own place.
Yes.
So from the age of 22 to 24, that 3-year gap, that's when I lived like proper street life.
Yes. But I think what I meant to say is that you had now spent over a decade doing drugs.
Oh, yes.
And not having any sense of, yes, you had a job at one point, you were in school at one point, you dropped out, you had a job, but you were living an abnormal childhood. You were living an abnormal life for over a decade at that point.
Yeah.
Did you ever have a moment in your mind where you were like, what am I doing?
No.
It never crossed your mind?
No, it didn't. That's why I believe in God the way that I do now, because I was so far gone that the only thing that brought me out of that was God. It's not like I made a personal choice. I mean, that's how much God loved me, that he was like, you know, he made the turnaround for me. I didn't see it coming. I didn't see it coming. I had no plan.
So what was that moment where things started to turn around?
You know, like I said, I always thought that I would always be in a fixed relationship, that I wouldn't have a child outside of wedlock. Like I was always like in long relationships. So one day I came back from Hatfield where I did housebreaking, all right? And I was on my way to get drugs and I was trying to get into a cab so that I could go to Sunnyside. right? And then this guy came out of the cab, and that's when, okay, the story gets very beautiful. I get very emotional, right? This guy gets out of a cab, and he says, so I thought he's a cab driver, and I said, I need to get to Sunnyside. So I get into the cab. He says, wait here. He goes somewhere for not too long, and my adrenaline is pumping because I just need to get my drugs, right? So then he comes, and then he says to me, then he goes into the passenger seat and the driver gets up. So I thought he was a cab driver and he wasn't. He was catching a cab himself. Anyway, we get to Sunnyside. I get off like in the middle of the bush. They're worried. What is this like petite? Because it's very small. You know, I was weighing like 42 kilograms. What is this girl? Because I never looked the part of a junkie. I always like looked proper. And I jumped off and then in the next 2 weeks, so you can't exactly see where I'm going. I'm just trying to show you the things of God. And then in 2 weeks later, I'm walking out of this drug dealer's house and I hear somebody say, hey, what's up? Do you remember me? And I'm like, a lot of people don't talk to me because they know that I'm not melancholy, okay? They know, like, just stay away from her. Don't even try and, like, get on that level with her. So I heard the voice that it didn't sound Nigerian or Tanzanian, like, you know, because that's where the people that were selling the drugs. It sounded a bit like someone like you would hear from school. And then I turned around and he said, I'm the guy that you caught a cab with. And I could feel in my body, because I was just using crack cocaine and heroin, that I was going to die anytime. And I've never taken any person's number. We exchanged numbers, not exchanged, I took his number, which is like unlike me. But I mean, you just don't question the things of God. Now that I'm older, it makes sense. And then I could feel that because I was trying to go hustle for money again, for my drug money. And I could feel in my body, I'm going to die anytime soon. And I got to a tiki box, made a phone call. I said, hey, where you at? Let me come through.
You called that guy?
I called that specific guy. Anyway, I got to this guy's house. So really, I can feel that I'm getting sober. So that innocence of happy, you know, because if you're not hard and into the drugs, there's also a character that I have that's very like well-mannered and sweet and everything, but I threw that character away and I could feel that I was becoming that gullible, soft, sweet person again. And got to his house and I got scared of it. I left and then I came the next day again. And we sort of had something for about a month. And he said to me that I need to go back home because the streets are going to kill me anytime soon. And that's when I went back home after 3 years. Knocked on the door. My mom was, this is so sad, and I need people to understand that never underestimate the power of a praying woman. When I knocked on the door, my brother was locked in at Schubert Park Flats. So he doesn't go out and use drugs. And my mom had gone to the police station looking for me as the missing person. And I remember I was lying down on the floor talking to my brother over the buckler.
The burglar boss.
Yes. And my mom walked up so tired in her face with these documents looking for me, and she found both her children there. You know what I'm saying? There she is, locking one not to go out and use drugs and going to look for the other one that's been gone missing. And my mom immediately packed my bags and she took me to her home, where she's from, her roots. She's from a beautiful home in Zimbabwe, from the farmland. And she left me there for 3 months. I went cold turkey.
Wow.
A lot of people thought I was going to come back, but I sat it through. I came back to South Africa, and my family thought it's best that I get a job so that...
What was it that Mom said to you? Because I'm so curious, you know, she hasn't seen you in so long.
Yeah.
She doesn't know if you're alive or dead.
Yeah.
When a person goes to open a missing persons report, the reality is we are looking for a person dead or alive.
Yeah.
And there you are.
Yeah.
What was the first thing she said to you?
She packed the bag. She just packed the bag. She wanted to get me out of Pretoria. She wanted to get me out of the system. So she packed a bag. She said, you have to go. And I got, and I just, it was as if there was a God force behind it. That's why I say never underestimate a praying woman. Because I went. Usually it's very difficult for us. We resist. I've been resisting, like you said, for all these years. I think time was time now, you know?
Did you cry?
No, I still had the, I just got off the drugs. So they're still in my system a bit, you know, and it's heroin. So if we're in the train, I'm going to go cold turkey anytime. I might just step back home, but I didn't. I went there and I went cold turkey, no rehab, no nothing.
So you spent 3 months in Zimbabwe, and in that time, what are you doing?
Worshipping God, being exposed to God, going through the whole cold turkey. And so my mom came and fetched me after 3 months, and I guess that that true happy was like being birthed again. And I came back, and her and my sister decided that I need to move to Johannesburg. My sister was living in Sunninghill. They immediately got me a job. I was supposed to be an air hostess, but I didn't come through with that. So I went back to the restaurant industry as a manager, and I fell. And I was rushed to hospital, and I was told I was 5 months pregnant.
Wow.
5 months pregnant. Now I'm thinking, it's impossible. I didn't do nothing with nobody, you know?
Yes.
Last person that was my boyfriend is those years ago, and I remembered, no, I was with their brother, you know? Fell pregnant, and that's when my life changed for the better.
So you were pregnant by the guy from the cab?
Yeah. Yeah. And found out that I was pregnant, and I had to make a choice. Do I go back to the street life? Because there's something about crack. It doesn't matter how old you are. You can be clean for 5 years. Even till now, I still dream about using crack. It's about the strength that you have within yourself. Are you not going to use, or are you going to use?
You were basically at a crossroads.
Yeah.
You are pregnant.
Yeah.
And it's either you're going to go back to the streets that was your home for the past however many years.
Yes.
Or you're going to turn your life around.
Yes. So I thought, okay, I'm definitely not going to use anymore because I have a child inside of me. It's fine, I can destroy myself, but there's a child inside of me. Am I going to give this child a chance? Doesn't matter what the story looks like now. You know, so I phoned the guy, I'm like, yo, what's up? This is what's happening. He's like, yo, I don't know you. I don't know you. So they gave me more strength. You know, if I feel rejected or denied or from pain, I grow from that pain into strength. And I promised myself that I was not going to use again. And I took it a day at a time. And when this child was born, she literally changed my life. I immediately went for a job interview because I did go to college. Even though I dropped out of high school, I went to college when I was 17. I did a secretarial course that my sister put me through. I failed the secretarial course, but I had a receptionist diploma. So I could go in to corporate as a receptionist. And I know it was a God thing. So I would have 3 jobs. I'd work at a DVD store and I'd work at Keg restaurant at night and I'd work at this day job as a receptionist just to get Pampers and take care of my child. And then I decided to go to a church. I became a born-again Christian and I got a flat in Sunninghill with the money that I was making. I mean, the flat itself was more than I was making, but God was just making a way through this child. She went to a private school. You know, all I had to do is just stop that lifestyle. And God really turned that pain through this child. I began to give life a second chance, you know.
So at what point did you then, and how did it happen that you reunited with your now husband?
You know, so my sister was working for this company and I was so much in the things of focusing on my child. I wasn't interested in anything else. My sister said to me that, guess who I bumped to? I think God also brought him out of my life because he knew that I was going to be toxic for him. I had to fix myself first. So at the right time, you know, my sister's like, yo, this is who I bumped into. And we connected. He met me. He came to my house. I was living with my sister at the moment. He came to my house and now he sees I've gained weight. I'm not that, and we went to a restaurant. Had we gone to a restaurant, back in the day, I'd be ordering whiskey, and then from that whiskey, it would be vodka. From vodka, I'd be phoning my dealer, and from that dealer, it's back to that road again. That's what he was exposed to through me. And here I am ordering tea, talking about my child constantly. And so he was shocked. It was like he was seeing a different person. And then the next day he said that he wanted to meet me up again. And I thought, you know what, I ain't got time for this. This child is the one that saved me. You know what I'm saying? So I said to him, I said, look, if you want to meet me, comes with a package. If you don't want this, then you can go, and I'll see what I do with myself and my child. No pressure. You know what I'm saying? And he said, no, okay, come. And mind you, he never liked children. He never liked children. When we were growing up, he didn't even like the sound of a child.
Yes.
And we're sitting at a restaurant, and my child was like a couple of months old, and God did his thing, and he picked up my daughter, and he's never let my daughter go till this day. My daughter now has traveled abroad. I mean, just the constant favor that's happening in my life because I made a choice to give life a second chance. It's mind-blowing. She's an A student. She does sports. She's a basketball player. She's very soft-spoken.
How old is she now?
She's 15, and we have another one. But this child is just, you know, she looks like the homie, you know what I'm saying? And we've spoken to her about him. We pray for him. I did, through the grapevine, find out how he's doing. He is doing time. He has made bad choices. He got into things that he's not supposed to do. So he's also in and out of jail and stuff like that. And we pray for him. I just thank God that that gift, that situation turned out to save my life. And life's just really good for me at the moment.
So what's next for you? What do you hope for yourself?
What is next for me is that I always tell people, don't let your past define, because there's a lot of people that's going to hear the story and going to say, no, we're happy. That never happened to you because of the way that I carry myself. Don't let your past define you. You got to know what your strength is, and don't be in competition with anybody. Because if you're going to look at other people's ways of doing things and want that, you're not from the same route. You don't have the same journey. So find what your strength is, use that for the better, and just be on that positive light. Be on that positive light. I'm hoping at the moment that I will, my daughter said the most deepest thing again, sorry, just to go back to that. She said, Mommy, I'd like to go on a holiday job now. If there's a holiday job for me, and with the money that I get, I'd like to pay it back to rape victims, like charity for rape victims. This is a 15-year-old talking. And so I think I want to look, Pretoria is, they don't call it Pitori Matlanyeng for nothing. There's a lot of darkness that's happening in that city. Now that I'm here and I'm all fine, I think I need to go back there and try and see what I can do, because there's a lot of broken souls there. There's a lot of broken souls.
Where's Dad now?
Passed away many years ago.
And how did you take it at the time?
I didn't cry. I was using. I was numb because he was a genius. He was an incredible man, and I feel like that's everything that's happened to my life, I don't question it. It happened. But one thing I am sort of saddened about is the fact that I didn't get to sit at my dad's feet and listen to his story, because it's hard to describe the kind of man my father was. But I'm sure he's proud now.
And Mom?
Mom is at home. She's sweet.
In Zim?
No, she's here. Pretoria.
This side, yes.
Pretoria. I'm full-on Pretoria girl. Mom is here praying. Yesterday she did say, my child, I'm happy that you were born. I thank God that you were born. Never heard that from my mom before. So I hope that God gives my mom many years and myself so that I can start spending the time with my mother.
And your siblings?
My siblings are wonderful. They're abroad. Some of them are abroad, some of them are here. My youngest is doing very well for himself. He's always stood by me. He was the one coming into my court cases, bailing me out of, jail. And my siblings are very supportive, very, very supportive.
I think your story is just one of triumph and overcoming such adversity. And I completely respect how you take responsibility for the choices that you've made in your life. But you also literally took the bull by the horns of this addiction thing. Very few people are able to go cold turkey and to be where you are today. So you clean and sober how long now?
15 years. I counted with my daughter. 15 years. No drink, no alcohol, no cigarettes. Clean and sober.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing your story, being open with us, and thank you for just giving hope to someone who might be in a very dark place that does not see an out. And hopefully you are able to offer them some light.
Thank you so much for your kindness.
Hashtag Unpacked with Relebogile. The reality is that drugs are everywhere and young people are constantly exposed to them. So for us to hear a story like this one, it is one of many. But I do believe that there is hope and there is light at the end of the tunnel. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a good night. Next time on Unpacked.
I didn't think it was real because it had never affected me. Nobody thought of checking him for COVID.
I actually also had COVID.
And then my sister then started getting sick.
Like you can see, she's fighting with death.
When they took her to the hospital, she was struggling to breathe. They called us and said, indeed, it's confirmed that the cause of death was related to COVID.
My life just shattered on that day.
Thank you so much for watching Unpacked with Relebogile Mabotja. Make sure you subscribe to my channel where you can get to watch more episodes. But more importantly, you can be part of our online community. Comment down below, share with us who you'd like to see on the show, what story you'd like us to discuss. We love engaging with you. Keep it coming and don't forget to subscribe.